Shalom, shalom. It's Brother Tender for something to chew on. Coming in, going to do another read-along update video for you. First off, I'd like to thank all the new subscribers we've got. We've had a few since last week. So thank you. And welcome to Something to Chew On, where we don't do mail-in ballots. Okay, I'm going to make this really, really brief today. Okay, the update part is I had finished the Gospel of Luke. It is now fully uploaded. There's a playlist. The vote last time, 1 Samuel 1, those videos are completely finished and are uploaded. Or, no, that wasn't the vote last time. But those videos are uploaded. That playlist is there. The vote last time, here we go. The vote last time was between Jeremiah and 1 Chronicles. And this one was actually close. There was only a difference of one vote between, first and second place, so to speak. And the winner was the prophet Jeremiah. That's who the winner was. And I started work on these videos for this late last night. And I am, I want to say halfway finished, right around the halfway mark. I think I got to chapter 26, which would be the halfway mark. And so, within the next, 2, 3, 4 days, I'll go ahead and finish those videos. And once I get them all finished, I'll upload them. Now, I'll most likely, I may or may not. I don't know. I know in the past, once I finished all the videos in whatever book, I would actually sit down in one sitting and just upload every one of them back to back to back to back. I may not do that this time, considering that there's, 52 chapters, I think is what it is, 52 chapters in the book of Jeremiah. And to upload 52 individuals back to back to back is, a significant effort. So I may, once I finish them, I may upload them, 10, 15 at a time. I don't know. I may actually just sit down and do all of them at once. I don't know. But just keep your eyes out. In the next, 2 or 3 days, I'll start uploading those. And, before next week, I'll have that entire playlist finished. Okay. Now, with that said, the vote this time, we're going to go a little different. I normally pick 2 books from the Old Testament or 2 books from the New Testament, whatever. Well, this time we're going to go a little different. We're going to pick one from the Tanakh and one from the Apostolic writings, the Old Testament, New Testament, however you want to label that. But this time, since I had 1 Chronicles on the table last time in the vote, I'm going to put it back on the table. Because like I said, it almost won. So, this week, the vote on hand is for 1 Chronicles or the book of Acts. There's your choices this week. 1 Chronicles or the book of Acts. Okay, now, with that said, there's your update. And I'm going to make this right here really brief. I had a friend this week. I'm not going to mention any names, but when he watches this video, he'll know who I'm talking about. He reminded me of a lesson or a principle, a lesson, a principle, a point, whatever. Something that most of us probably know. If you don't know this, well, hey, here's your opportunity to learn something. But most of us probably know this, and I think we often forget. I know I do, especially in the heat of the moment. That's when it really matters. And as I said to my buddy, I said, I'm preaching to myself as much as I'm preaching to you. I said, I'm preaching more to myself than I am to you. Because I know that when things are going good, everything's all happy-go-lucky, but the moment trials and temptations, the heat and the pressure, the thorns and the thistles, however you want to label it, when they come, that's when the true character comes out, so to speak. You see, in the heat of the battle, what decision did you make? Did you zig when you should have zagged, so to speak? But like I said, I'll make this brief. I'm going to read 2 scriptures, and this all kind of goes back to what I've said in a couple of my past videos. I think last week I talked about instruments, being instruments of righteousness, a sword of righteousness. And that would go back to, what was it I said about 2 or 3 weeks ago? Oh, about setting your face like flint and letting sparks come off. When you're struck, persecution, whether physical, verbal, whatever, and you're struck like the master, he set his face like flint. And he gave off light. And we're to give off light. All this stuff, and I made the comment back then, I said, all that was part of a bigger teaching. Well, this is another little small part of that teaching. Let me throw this out there. While this is on my mind, because this is kind of the overarching theme of this whole teaching. What is it? Proverbs 27:17. It says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Just think about this for a second. Just ask yourself, hypothetically, that piece of iron that is being sharpened, if it had feelings, how do you think it would feel? Do you think it would enjoy being grinded and grated on? Most likely not. It all goes back to us being a sword, being struck in the flint, giving off light. In the moment, it doesn't feel good. It grates on our flesh. It upsets our flesh. And most often, that will cause us to react from our flesh. But we always have to remember, and here's the point of today. Here's the point, the word of encouragement, however you want to look at it, for today. Let's go to James chapter 1. Like I said, most of us know this. But, as Peter said, even though you're fully grounded in these things, sometimes I feel the need to remind you. And like I said, I'm reminding myself more so than anybody else. This is definitely for me. But if we go to James chapter 1, I'm going to read out of the King James today. James chapter 1 and verse 2. I'm going to read 3 verses here, and then I'm going to go read 1 verse out of the prophet Isaiah. But James chapter 1, starting at verse 2 in the King James, it says, my brethren, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. But let patience have her perfect work, that ye may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. When the trials and the temptations and the heat and the pressure comes, patience. Let patience have her perfect work. Now, I know we've all heard, don't ever pray for patience, because the Most High is going to put you in a situation where you got to learn patience. Well, here you go. Perfect example. I'm not saying go pray for patience. But when it comes, patience. Let patience have her perfect work, so that we will be perfect and entire. Okay. We go back to the prophet Isaiah. I'm going to just read 1 verse right here. Isaiah 4, let's see, what is it? King James? Yeah. Isaiah 48:10 from the King James. It says, behold, I have refined thee, but not with silver. I have chosen thee, or tested thee, proven thee, in the furnace of affliction. Now let's just read that. Let's look. Yeah, the English Standard Version has it. It basically says the same thing. It's just worded slightly different. Isaiah 48:10 English Standard Version, it says, "Behold, I have refined you, but not as silver." King James says, "not with silver." "But not as silver, I have tried you in the furnace of affliction." Okay, now let's look at it in the scripture 2009. Ha ha, it's actually got a footnote here. "See, I have refined you, but not as silver. I have chosen you in the furnace of affliction." And it makes a reference back to Deuteronomy 8. Let's just go there for a second. I didn't even realize it had a footnote to Deuteronomy 8, but I know what Deuteronomy 8 says. So let me just read this right here. I'm going to read two verses in the end of this. Deuteronomy 8, verse 2. Now, this is from the Scripture version 2009. And the end of verse 3, we're all going to recognize. And if you didn't know this is where it comes from, this is where it comes from. This is where the master quotes from. But in Deuteronomy 8:2, it says, "And you shall remember that Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, your Elohim, led you all the way these 40 years in the wilderness." This is when the children of Israel come out of Egypt and they wandered in the desert, the wilderness, for 40 years. That's what this is talking about, okay? Let me start over. Deuteronomy 8:2. From the Scripture version 2009, it says, "And you shall remember that Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, your Elohim, led you all the way these 40 years in the wilderness to humble you." There's that theme I keep hitting on, humble. "To prove you, to know what is in your heart, whether you guard his commands or not." Verse 3. "And he humbled you and let you suffer hunger and fed you with manna, which you did not know, nor did your forefathers, nor did your fathers know, to make you know that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh." Makes sense? Now, like it says up there in verse 2, to humble you, to prove you. You see the theme that links all these verses together? To know what is in your heart. Meaning, you're going to go through trials, temptation, heat, pressure, thorns, and thistles, all this stuff of the world, to see what's actually in your heart. You often hear, I'll give the simplest, easiest explanation for this. You'll often, for anybody who knows, whether you've experienced this or not, everybody can relate to this analogy, I would think. You're hammering a nail, and you miss that nail, you slip off the head of that nail, and you hit your thumb. What's the first thing that comes out of your mouth? Is it a 4-letter word? Or is it praise? And most people, and hey, believe me, I'm not saying I'm perfect in this situation, but that's the situation I'm talking about. When that heat and that pressure, trial and temptation, and thorns and thistles, that's you smacking your thumb. What's your first reaction? Is it one from your flesh with a 4-letter word? Or is it one from your spirit in praise? Because you know that patience is going to have her perfect work. That the heat and the pressure, I have tested you in the furnace of affliction, that is going to produce righteousness. James goes on to say in that same chapter here, let's go back to that. Let me go back to that. It says, if you go on down in James chapter 1, since that's where we started, that's where we'll end. Where's it at here? I think it's verse 19. Yeah. James 1, verse 19 from the King James says, "Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath," anger. Verse 20, for the wrath of man, the anger of man worketh not the righteousness of Elohim. My encouragement to myself and to everyone else is, when the heat of the battle comes, whatever shape, form, or fashion that takes, remember, we are to respond from our spirit, not from our flesh. Now, like I said, I'm preaching to myself. I am preaching to myself. But in how we react in these situations shows what's in our heart. How did it say in Deuteronomy? To know what is in thy heart. Deuteronomy 8:2, middle of the verse. Does that make sense? It's like, I'll say this and I'll be done. I had to go see. We won't go into all the details. I'll save you the pain of the details. But I had a meeting with an official government type person. We'll put it that way. And first thing out of her mouth when I went to see this lady, how you doing today? And you know what I responded? Just off the top of my head, it come to me. I said, the world may be going to hell in a handbasket, and the situation is worse and getting worse. I said, but I'm great. And that struck I ain't going to say it struck a nerve with her, but she turned around and she said, I love your attitude. That's a great attitude to have. I said, well, that's the way I'm supposed to be. But just think about it. No matter what's going on around us, no matter he said, she said, the corruption of the world, whatever's going on, we shouldn't allow any of that to affect our spirit, our demeanor, if you will, our attitude. It says, give thanks in all things. That's what Paul wrote in Ephesians. Give thanks in all things. In good things, thank you for the good things. In bad things, why? Because we know to let patience have her perfect work. We may be going through hell now, but the outcome is going to benefit us. Like they used to say when I was in the Marines, it's all good training. Like, training for what? It doesn't matter. It's all good training. We are in a constant battle. And whether we're in the heat of the actual battle at the moment or not, we're all in training. So be encouraged. Just remember, react from your spirit. React from your spirit, because the trials, the temptation, the heat, the pressure is going to shape us into the image of our Master. But with that, I'll be done. And I'll say Shabbat Shalom. And remember, the vote this week is between 1 Chronicles and the book of Acts. And I'll end this like I end it every week. Don't just read this thing, but study it. Shalom, shalom, folks.